What's up, guys? I got a special video for you guys today. I've been thinking about how I wanted to go about doing this, so we'll just see how this plays out. The purpose of this video was really just to compare an old game that I remember playing as a kid and a brand new-ish game that I'm playing now as an adult on a completely different piece of hardware. And I want to be able to show them kind of back-to-back in a quick format video, and hopefully it works out pretty well. From the moment I owned my very first video game console to even now, I've always had some kind of racing game in my collection. Growing up with the Nintendo 64, it was basically required by everybody to own a copy of Mario Kart 64. I really enjoyed learning how to play 3D racing games as a kid and evolving with the medium as I got older. Some other classics I grew up with were Lego Racers and Episode 1 Racer, with on occasion playing some Diddy Kong Racing with my neighborhood friends. But one special game was purchased alongside this N64, a little known title called F1 World Grand Prix. F1 World Grand Prix was quite the experience for a young kid playing video games for the first time. To give some background, growing up, my dad was always a fan of F1, and we would spend weekends watching it on television. When we got the N64, it also came with a racing wheel, which was pretty cool at the time, and it also presented its own learning curve. Diving into F1 World Grand Prix, to put simply, it's a very trimmed down F1 racing simulator. You get to race in several different modes and choose from a wide variety of drivers and teams from the 97 F1 season. Of course, the legendary Michael Schumacher was part of this season and my number one pick for basically every race. Something about that red Ferrari always looks so cool next to the other cars. But that, I think, could be attributed to the lack of detail that the N64 was able to produce with its limited hardware capabilities. At the time, this game was pretty revolutionary in terms of sim racers. Before each race, you can adjust the different telemetry settings depending on race conditions, even though I still have no idea how any of that actually works. All of the tracks are actual circuits from the F1 season, and you can choose weather settings too. Back when I was a kid, I always loved racing in the rain, but now I know racing in the rain is actually really difficult, but it still feels pretty magical at times. One of my favorite tracks was Monaco because of its street circuit. Once again, not knowing how challenging that course is compared to the rest, it was still really cool racing through the city, going through the tunnel, and just hearing the engine scream inside while you're barreling down this highway. This was the only F1 game I played, and I wouldn't really pick up another one until recently. So imagine my surprise when I went from this to this. Now this is F1 racing. Right out the gate, the massive difference in graphics is apparent. Jumping from 5th generation gaming, so the Nintendo 64 era, and going up to about 8th gen or 9th gen, depending on if you play this on the Xbox One PS4 era or the Series X PS5 era, for this specific genre is almost very jarring. One quick thing to mention, when I was recording earlier this year, the footage from this is actually coming from my lovely VCR box, also known as the Xbox One. But since then I've upgraded to the fridge, also known as the Xbox Series X, which brought its own unique upgrades in performance and graphic fidelity. Some of the biggest changes come with the menus and navigation throughout the game. Of course, sounds and model designs have evolved dramatically, and tracks are all 3D scanned to insane accuracy now. One of the biggest improvements is how the game trains you to drive better. Everything from tutorials to better racing lines. Of course, there's a F2 season, so you can learn how to race in F2 before you get promoted to F1. One of the few things I wanted to do was jump right into single races just to experience the tracks. But with these new menus, it took a minute for me to figure out, which one to go to be able to do that. Afterwards, I was able to choose those tracks, both the old ones I was familiar with and some new ones, and then I jumped in to see how it felt. From the get-go, the controls felt more precise and responsive. On the N64, sometimes driving with the D-pad was easier than using the analog stick, which I experimented with, and I thought that was really funny, that the D-pad was just somehow better than the analog stick. Of course, with modern controls and their precision, rounding corners actually felt rounded instead of square. Monaco looked even more beautiful and challenging. Montreal looked exactly how I remembered it, and having actually attended a race at Suzuka Circuit here in Japan, being able to race on both the old and the new tracks brought a fresh perspective to this game. F1 racing has been a small but meaningful part of my personal and gaming life. Being able to play both games side by side and remember the early days of gaming has been a great trip. I don't have the biggest interest in playing racing games all the time. They're just fun to play every once in a while. And honestly, I really want to try an F1 racing game that's in VR because I'm a big fan of VR and VR simulators are really cool. And so being able to play a VR F1 racing game would definitely be a dream come true. Hey, thanks for checking out this video. Hope you guys found it very informative or at least entertaining. If you liked what you saw, make sure you leave a comment, hit the like button, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.